My name is Emma Walker. I was 10 years old when my older sister Jasmine took me to the Cook County Social Services Center in Chicago on a gray, drizzly day. "Wait right here, sweetheart," she said as we stopped in front of a heavy silver door. "I'll be right back with muffins and hot chocolate." I nodded, still hugging the worn-out teddy bear that had survived the crash that killed our parents. I sat on the concrete steps, my shoulders damp from the rain, eyes fixed on her figure growing smaller at the end of the street. She didn't look back, not even once. I waited 10 minutes, then 30, an hour later. A social worker stepped outside and asked for my name. I told her. She crouched down and said, gently but firmly, "Come with me, honey." I didn't understand. I didn't cry. But inside me, something shattered like glass hitting cold tile. Jasmine never came back. The file said she had signed away her guardianship rights 2 days earlier. That same morning, she received nearly $12,000 from an emergency grant, part of a program for people who couldn't care for underage dependents. I didn't know what she needed the money for. But years later, I overheard a retired caseworker mention. Jasmine had been drowning in debt trying to pay off a loan her boyfriend had taken out. He bailed, the woman said, left her stuck with bills and threats. Maybe she thought it was the only way. Maybe. But what I couldn't forgive wasn't the money. It was how she left, without looking back. No final hug, no tears. I was just a kid, and no kid deserves to be discarded like that. I was placed in a temporary foster facility on the West Side. In the first year alone, I was passed around to 3 different families. Every time I left, I carried a plastic bag with some second-hand clothes and my one-eyed teddy bear. The first family was a middle-aged couple in a working-class neighborhood. When I dropped a dish, they didn't yell. They just sighed, like losing money. The second family told the neighbors I was a distant niece. They put me in a storage room that smelled of mold at night and had no sunlight in the morning. The third locked me outside in the backyard for forgetting to take out the trash. I sat behind the compost bin, my face stung by the wind, nibbling on half a sandwich I'd hidden in my coat pocket. I stopped asking why after a while. I stopped sharing. I stopped telling stories. There was only one adult who ever really looked me in the eyes when she spoke. A social worker named Linda. She once told me, "Emma, you can grow up to be anything. Don't ever let anyone tell you you're worthless." She didn't know that every night. I whispered that line like a spell. One afternoon, while cleaning out the storage closet at the group home, I found an old postcard buried under some paperwork. There was handwriting on it, familiar loops and slants. If I could go back, I'd do things differently. J, just the letter J. No return address, no stamp. But the ink slightly smudged black, written in the same slanted style she used to scribble in her school notebooks, was unmistakable. I tore off a corner of the card, then taped it back. I didn't know if I hated her or was just trying to hold on to the last piece of her I had. But from that moment, I decided I'd keep it along with the teddy bear as the final 2 relics from the life I lost. Not to remember her, but to remind myself I am not disposable. When I turned 11, a little kid at the center once asked me if I thought my sister would ever come back. I said she doesn't need to. One day, she'll see me again. Just not in this place. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew this much. I'd walk away, alone, and never look back. The first 3 years in the foster care system were a maze with no exit. I, Emma Walker, was the kind of kid everyone called good, but no one remembered by name. I ate little, spoke less, and always cleared the table. After dinner, even when no one asked, they liked that. A well-behaved child tended to stay longer, but I knew the truth. One phone call, and I'd be gone again from their home. Another set of foster parents, another room as cold and impersonal as my name on a welfare list. I learned to drift like a ghost through houses that never really wanted me. Every time I was moved, I packed my life into a plastic bag, 3 worn-out outfits, a few notebooks, a stitched-up teddy bear, and a postcard I'd folded into a paper star and tucked inside my bra. I didn't cry over Jasmine anymore, but sometimes I still wondered if I had been smarter, quieter, better. Would she have kept me? I did well in school, not because anyone pushed me, but because I needed something that belonged to me. I always turned in my homework early, topped the English class, and chose the seat in the very back, away from trouble, away from attention. My 6th grade language arts teacher was Miss Carter. One day after reading my essay, titled Where I Belong, she asked me to stay after class. "Emma," she said, "you write better than any student I've ever taught. Have you ever thought about going into advertising?" I just stared at her. Advertising. She smiled, pulled open her drawer, and handed me a brochure from a local community college's marketing program. "Just a thought. You've got something." That night, I went to the public library. I used a shared computer to Google how to write ad copy, how to understand consumer psychology, how to build a campaign plan. I didn't grasp everything, but I felt something shift inside me, like maybe there was a future if I was willing to dig deep enough. I started writing everything I learned into a black notebook I called my survival book. I wrote October 17th. I learned today that people don't buy products, they buy feelings. If I can make them feel something, I win. I knew I couldn't age out of the system with nothing. By 16, I'd need to stand on my own. And if I was going to survive out there, I needed skills, not sympathy. After school, I took any job I could find handing out flyers, bussing tables at a fast food place, wiping down dryers at a laundromat. Some days, I ate only once, saving money to buy second-hand books from a thrift store downtown. A man named Caleb, the night guard at the library, saw me reading an old book on ad copy. He said, "If you're serious about learning, I've got an old laptop. It's slow, but it works." I cried right there, not because of the kindness, but because it was the first time someone had invested in me. That clunky 2009 Toshiba laptop was a whole new universe. I downloaded free photo editing software, watched hours of YouTube tutorials, and took every free writing course I could find online, every sample ad I wrote. I saved each one a brick in the foundation I was building from scratch, but I wasn't always strong. Some nights, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the baby in my foster home cry from hunger while the parents snored through their sedatives. I'd think, what am I becoming? Another Jasmine. A silent shadow in this broken system I almost gave up once, almost disappeared. But then I opened the black notebook and reread the first thing I ever wrote. If I can make them feel something, I win. I needed the world to feel me. I didn't want Jasmine to regret leaving me. I wanted her to never be able to forget me. By 17, I had a modest portfolio of articles, a tiny blog with a few thousand followers, and enough writing samples to land an unpaid internship at a small local marketing agency. The director was a woman named Miranda. She looked at me, skeptical. No one told me I had to take in a kid with no parents, no credentials. But you've got an eye for copy. More importantly, you've got a reason. I didn't say much, just nodded. She smiled for the first time. Then start with the storage closet. I said yes, because I knew one thing for sure. When no one hands you a ladder, you start climbing from the basement. I was 18 when I received a copy of my birth certificate, still listing my former legal guardian, Jasmine Walker. Somehow, those faint ink lines clenched my throat tighter than I expected. Nearly 8 years had passed. I was no longer that little girl clutching a teddy bear on the steps of social services. I was a young woman with content writing experience, a personal blog, a few paying freelance projects, and a full scholarship to study digital marketing at a community college in Illinois. But just when I thought I was strong enough to face the past, the wound began to bleed again. I stood in front of a faded gray door at a ground-floor apartment in Southside, the address listed on Jasmine's most recent record from the Social Services Network. My hand trembled slightly as I pressed the doorbell. A little boy with curly hair, maybe 4 years old, opened the door. Behind him, the noise of loud music, clinking beer bottles, and then her Jasmine. I recognized her instantly, even though she looked utterly depleted. Sunken eyes, pale lips, a staggering posture. She wore a thin tank top, cigarette in hand. Her eyes widened at the sight of me, as if the past had walked right through her doorway. Emma. Her voice was raspy, uncertain whether from shock or alcohol. I couldn't tell. I gripped the strap of my canvas bag and carefully chose my words. I just wanted to know if you're okay. She laughed, a bitter, hollow sound, like a rotting chair creaking under too much weight. You here to rub it in? Come play the Good Samaritan. I froze, the way she stepped back, arms crossed, guarded. It was exactly like 8 years ago, the day she left me in the rain. Except this time, she stood at her own threshold, and I was the one returning from the ashes. No, I said calmly. I just wanted to hear the truth. Just once. The truth. Jasmine squinted. You want me to say I chose money over you, that I signed you away to pay off some goddamn debt for a man who disappeared. That every morning since I wake up wishing I were dead. My heart pounded like war drums, but I didn't move, didn't cry. I had rehearsed this moment in my mind 100 times. I thought I'd break down, scream, maybe even hug her and forgive her, but I didn't. I just felt tired. You could apologize, I said, just one word. She stared at me for a long time, then shrugged. No, because I don't think I owe you that. I turned around and walked away as the door slammed shut behind me. No dramatics, no shouting, just a cold, hollow thud that buried the last flicker of hope. I walked for nearly an hour. No bus, no cafe, just the wind slipping through my thin sleeves, the honk of passing cars, and the smell of burnt fast food curling through the air. The whole city felt irrelevant. 8 years of clawing my way forward, just to be rejected again. Back in my room, I sat on the floor, opened my bag, and pulled out the old postcard, the one I once believed was her silent apology. I stared at the slanted handwriting, at the final J, and let out a dry laugh. Then I ripped it into shreds, not because I hated her, but because I refused to carry illusions for even one more day. It took me a week to recover. But here's the difference: I didn't collapse. Before, pain made me curl inward. Now, it lit a fire, I wrote a long blog post, no names, no blame, just the story of a girl left in the rain, and how she rose from 8 years of silence. The piece spread across social media, thousands of shares. A week later, a rep from a creative media startup reached out. "We love your voice," she said. "Have you ever considered working in content strategy?" I said yes, because I realized something: the past is a blade, and I get to choose, use it to sever what held me back, or to carve a path forward. I chose the latter. Emma Walker would no longer be a victim. I stepped into the first real office of my life the week I turned 19. It was a young media startup in Chicago's Fulton Market, where the floor still smelled of fresh adhesive and sunlight poured across open desks. People wore hoodies, not suits. Brainstorms happened in cafes, not boardrooms. For the first time, I didn't have to apologize for where I came from. No one asked who my parents were. No one looked at me like a government handout. I started as an intern, doing nameless tasks, transcribing interview clips, writing captions for social posts, editing client blogs. Nothing glamorous. But I knew I was laying a foundation, and I've never been afraid to get my hands dirty. I did more than asked, stayed later than anyone else. Usually the first one in to unlock the door. Within 3 months, I rebuilt an entire content plan for a local coffee campaign and boosted engagement by 240%. Miranda, the woman who first gave me a shot, just said one thing: "Take the empty office at the end of the hall. Starting next week, your official staff." I didn't say anything, just nodded. But that night, I sat alone at a cheap dinner table in my rented room, eating cup noodles, and smiled for the first time in years. 2 years later, I moved to New York. By then, I had a polished portfolio, a couple of small digital content awards, and enough savings to rent my own studio in Queens. No roommates, just me, my laptop, and a fire that wouldn't burn out. I launched a boutique agency called Gray Line Collective. At first, it was just a team of freelancers, taking subcontract work from bigger firms. But I knew how to make clients remember us, not with flashy budgets, but with razor-sharp strategy. I didn't sell with charm, I sold with results. Our first major client was a statewide gym chain. Their engagement numbers were plummeting, and they wanted a campaign that personalized the customer journey. I pitched, "Let's tell real stories, no filters. Show them people who've broken down and rebuilt themselves. Not perfect, just real." I even sent them my old blog post, the one about being abandoned in the rain. They didn't ask who I used to be. They just said, 3-month contract. Let's go. I worked so much I forgot my birthday. The entire year I was 21. I didn't date, didn't party, didn't waste time. I lived like a war machine, fueled by old pain. But even with everything I was building, I kept one list in my heart. Named Jasmine Walker, status viewed my LinkedIn 3 times, never connected. Once, she commented on one of my posts, "Inspiring. Wishing you success." No one else knew. No one else had any idea that the woman who left me like trash on a sidewalk once tried to bless my future. I read the comment, then deleted it. I didn't need her good wishes. I needed something real. Not in words, but in her having to see me rise from the very place she left me. At 22, Gray Line Collective landed a full rebranding contract with a major Midwest retail corporation. I wasn't just the strategist, I was the lead presenter to the executive board. The pitch was in a high-rise downtown Chicago, my first time back in the city in nearly 5 years. I stood in the women's restroom before the meeting, straightening my cream blazer, fixing my tie. My frame was still lean, but my eyes in the mirror were iron. No longer little Emma. I was Emma Walker, founder, CEO, survivor. As I rode the elevator up to the 37th floor, a strange realization hit me. I had never truly forgiven Jasmine. Not because of what she did, but because I hadn't yet made her look me in the eye and see who I'd become. But fate, or maybe the universe's twisted sense of humor, beat me to it. That same day, while reviewing job applications for our upcoming campaign, one name stopped me cold. Jasmine Walker, position applied for administrative assistant. Her cover letter was vague, littered with typos, her resume disjointed, inconsistent. I stared at the screen, my heart pounded. She had no idea that the company she was applying to was mine, and I, the little sister she once left in the rain, held the power to decide if she got a second chance. I didn't reject her. I moved her application to the in-person interview pile, not because I wanted to humiliate her, but because it was time for her to look me in the eye. And remember, Emma Walker had returned, and this time I didn't need anyone to open the door for me. I sat alone in my office on the 15th floor, lights glowing above, city skyline flickering just beyond the glass. On my desk was a printed stack of applications for the administrative assistant position, and right in the middle was a file labeled Jasmine Walker. I'd read it 3 times, typos, spotty experience, a glaring 2-year gap from 2020 to 2022. No explanation, no reference letters, just one short paragraph. Probably typed out in a haze of sleepless nights. I'm willing to learn and work hard for a second chance at life. I wondered, did Jasmine know that the second chance she was begging for rested in the hands of the very girl she abandoned more than a decade ago? The next morning, I arrived earlier than usual. I chose a sharp black blazer dress, hair in a high bun, deep red lipstick. I looked like a completely different person from the skinny, withdrawn child who was bounced from foster home to foster home, unwanted, unloved, too quiet to connect. My HR assistant knocked. "Miss Jasmine Walker is here." I didn't answer right away. I closed my eyes for 5 full seconds, then exhaled and said over the intercom, "Send her in." The door opened. She stepped in, wearing a cheap business suit, scuffed shoes, curls frizzed and undone. Her purse was cracked at the corners, but it was her eyes, once intimidating to me, that now looked anxious and unsure. She didn't recognize me, not at first. "Hello, Ms. Walker," I said evenly, not stressing the name. "Please, have a seat." She sat down, fingers interlaced. I could see them trembling slightly. Whether from nerves or something deeper, I couldn't say. "Thank you for coming in today," I continued, voice steady and professional. "Before we get into the technical questions, I want to ask something simple. Why do you want this job?" Jasmine swallowed hard. Her throat bobbed. "Because I need to start over. I don't have a fancy degree, but I work hard. I don't have anything left to lose." I nodded, jotting down fake notes. Meanwhile, my thoughts were screaming, nothing left to lose. What about me, Jasmine? Did you ever think about what I had to lose? But I said nothing. Instead, I asked, "There's a 2-year gap in your employment history. Can you elaborate?" She bit her lip, lowered her eyes. I was trapped in a bad relationship. Then came the breakdown, but I'm trying to change. Silence filled the space between us. I looked into her eyes for real, for the first time, and in that exact moment, she knew. "Emma," she whispered, barely audible, the strength in her voice gone. I smiled, not the warm kind, but the smile of someone who had clawed their way up from hell. It's been a while. That moment lasted a lifetime. I didn't yell, I didn't forgive. I just let her sit there pale, lips twitching as if she'd walked straight into a nightmare she thought she'd buried. "Do you have any questions for me?" I asked, like I would with any other candidate. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her gaze dropped. "No," she murmured. I don't think I'm qualified." I gave a small nod. "Maybe not, but maybe yes. We'll be in touch." She stood, bowed her head, walked out in silence. But just before the door closed, I heard it soft, faint, almost swallowed by the hallway. "I'm sorry, I didn't respond. I just looked down at her file. One more time." And 5 minutes later, I crossed her off the rejection list. Not because I'd forgiven her, but because I wanted her to know the opportunity she once threw away had grown up and now held her future in its hands. But I wouldn't retaliate with cruelty. I gave her the job a simple admin role, no power, just enough to get by. Shared office space with 3 others. I wanted her to walk that hallway every day, see my name on the wall, and understand what she once saw as a burden had become a name. Emma Walker. No one lifted me, and I don't need a too late apology. 1 week later, Jasmine officially started her job. Her office was 2 hallways away from mine, on the 8th floor where the admin support staff worked. I hadn't spoken to her since the interview, and she hadn't come looking for me. I told her direct manager, no special treatment, no bias. Evaluate her like anyone else. I didn't want to punish her. I wanted her to understand. To feel that my cold silence wasn't cruelty, it was a reminder. On her first day, I happened to maybe intentionally step into the elevator with her. We didn't say a word, but I noticed the way her hand gripped her worn-out purse strap, her head tilted downward to hide her eyes. I stood tall, gaze forward. For the first time in my life, I was taller than her in every sense. 3 months passed. Jasmine showed up every day, never late, never loud. Her emails were short, to the point. Her manager, Paula, gave me a brief report. She's quiet, nervous, maybe, but diligent. I nodded, gave no reaction. But sometimes, during late evenings when I stayed behind to review quarterly metrics, I'd glance at the internal camera feed just to see her still there, reorganizing the supply room or wiping down dusty files. No one asked her to do that, but she did it anyway. Maybe she was afraid of losing what might be her last chance, or maybe she truly wanted to make amends. One rainy September evening, I left late and passed by the pantry on the 8th floor. A voice drifted from inside, low and tired. I didn't think she'd ever come back. I did something terrible, but she still gave me a chance. I paused outside, not stepping in. Through the gap in the door, I saw Jasmine sitting beside a young staffer, holding a paper cup of coffee, eyes distant. I don't know why she did it. Maybe to remind me every day. Maybe to punish me with kindness. And I don't deserve it. I turned away, quietly. I didn't know how I felt. Was it enough? Was it right? It wasn't satisfaction. It wasn't pain anymore either. It was a void. Like I was standing on a bridge between resentment and forgiveness, and hadn't yet decided which side to cross. That winter, our company hosted the 10 Years of Gray Line Collective celebration, our biggest event to date. Press, clients, staff all gathered for the occasion. I was asked to give a speech. At first, I declined. But Miranda, the woman who'd once given me my first shot, called and said, "It's time you told the truth." So I stepped onto the stage, facing more than 200 people. The spotlight blurred out the crowd, but I saw her, Jasmine, sitting in the very last row, hands folded in her lap, eyes locked on me, and I began, not dramatically, not to draw pity. I told the story of a girl left in the rain on the streets of Chicago, 10 years old, of plastic bags filled with tattered clothes, of foster homes and a black notebook called the Survival Book, of a postcard with no return address. I never said her name. I just said I lived half my life asking one question: how could someone who was supposed to love me throw me away? I never got an answer. The room fell silent. I took a breath and continued. But eventually I realized not everyone has the strength to do the right thing. Not everyone is brave enough to say they're sorry. So I stopped waiting. I forgave not because they deserved it, but because I didn't want to carry that weight anymore. Applause erupted. Some stood, but I didn't look at them. I looked at the last row. Jasmine had risen to her feet, her face streaked with tears, and for the first time in over a decade, I saw her not as a shadow from my past, but as a person, fragile, human. After the party ended, I walked past the back parking lot. She was waiting alone, under the dim yellow glow of the street lamp, her silhouette stretching long over the wet concrete. "Emma," she said. Her voice didn't shake this time. I have no excuses, but today I finally understood. I looked at her, stayed quiet for a beat, then nodded gently. "I know. Can you ever forgive me?" She asked. I thought for a moment. "Not completely," I answered honestly, "but maybe. I'm starting to." She broke down in tears, but this time I didn't walk away, because I was no longer the girl who'd been left behind. I was the woman who now got to choose who was worth keeping. 3 months after the company's anniversary celebration, I proposed transferring Jasmine to our internal HR team, a job that wasn't easy, but no longer the lowest rung on the ladder. Paula looked surprised. "Is she even qualified?" she asked. I simply replied, "She's determined." I wanted to see if given a real opportunity, what would Jasmine do with it? She never thanked me, never acted grateful. She just worked, focused, quiet, efficient. Even though I kept my distance, I monitored closely every report, every bit of feedback. Once, I saw her leave a meeting, clutching a rejected proposal, her eyes red but lips pressed tight. No excuses, no complaints. She was learning to take accountability, not through words, but through action. One morning, I arrived early. A light snow had fallen. The office was still quiet. I found her in the hallway, wiping down the glass conference doors. That wasn't her job, but I said nothing. I just walked up and handed her a coffee. "You still like mocha, right?" I asked casually, as if 12 years of silence hadn't split our story in half. She looked at me, surprised, then gave a small nod. I didn't wait for a thank you. I simply stood next to her, watching the snow settle outside the window. "I didn't do all this to get revenge," I said. "I did it to survive, and success just happened to follow." She stayed silent. After a while, she asked quietly, "And now how do you feel?" I took a sip of my coffee, warmer than I expected. "I feel like I'm not chained to the past anymore." She nodded slightly, eyes misty, but no tears fell. "So what can I do to make it right?" she asked. I didn't answer right away, but I already knew. 3 months later, Greyline Collective launched a program to support youth who had aged out of foster care. The name Second Voice, founder Jasmine Walker, I just signed off on it. She did everything else, coordinating with social services, securing scholarships, organizing speaking events. I attended the launch ceremony from the back row. On stage, Jasmine didn't dwell on her own past. She said just one thing. Sometimes you don't need to be fully forgiven. You just need to believe you can still do the right thing. The room went silent. I scanned the crowd. Some of the kids looked exactly like I once did, suspicious eyes, hunched shoulders, unsure if anyone really wanted to help. I knew that feeling, and now I knew she understood it too. A year later, Jasmine submitted her resignation. In her letter, she wrote, "I believe I've reached the end of my path to redemption, at least here. If Emma approves, I'd like to devote myself full-time to growing Second Voice into an independent nonprofit, helping other kids find their voice." I held the letter in my hands and read it slowly. I wasn't sad. I wasn't hesitant. I just wrote 3 words at the bottom: I approve. At Jasmine's farewell ceremony, the whole company showed up. Miranda spoke first, then Paula. When Jasmine stepped up to the podium, her eyes met mine, finally, without fear or shame. "I used to think I didn't deserve to stand here," she said. "But I've learned every journey of redemption, no matter how it begins in darkness, can end in light if you're willing to walk it all the way." I rose, walked onto the stage, and hugged her tightly in front of everyone. No more victim, no more traitor. Just 2 people once broken who had the courage to stitch their lives back together. Months later, when Second Voice was featured on Good Morning America, I received an email from Jasmine, just 4 words: "You are a miracle." I smiled, didn't reply, because I knew I had won, not just over her, but over the ghosts of my past. Emma Walker, was the girl once left behind, and now I choose who walks forward with me.